Yes, hello. Hi. I'm Sh- uh, I'm the NAI recognizes, publicizes. Okay.
I don't know if you want to ask everyone to have a seat,
Okay.
and then don't forget to tell us about NAI
Right.
yourself, and then. Okay.
Can I have your attention, please? We're going to start the program, so I would, like to invite you all to come and take your seats. Very good. Well, I'm very pleased to welcome you to the Northeastern University chapter meeting of the National Academy of Inventors. The National Academy of Inventors is a national organization that recognizes, publicizes, promotes, and educates inventors with U.S. patents. It's, as you all know, invention is a key driver of the economic engine of the United States, and the NAI plays a key role in recognizing academic inventors since many of the inventions today are translated from academia to the marketplace. The Northeastern chapter serves to empower inventorship and entrepreneurship across the innovation ecosystem. So by recognizing, inspiring, educating, and connecting members of the academic and industrial communities. And towards that end, we have this audience includes people from the university and also people from industry, and we want to see the connections grow. If you want more information, please visit the CRI, the Center for Research Innovation at Northeastern, which handles all the intellectual property of the university, and it has a web page focused on the NAI, and there you can also apply to be a member if you're not a member yet. The university itself has been recognized by the national body, by NAI, and we have several fellows, which is the highest recognition given by by NAI, as well as senior members, and and several members and also student members. And we're strongly encourage you to become a member if you're not one already. So this is the annual meeting, and this meeting is focused on the role of artificial intelligence in healthcare. And I'm sure you all, know about the remarkable impact that AI has had more recently, but through generative AI, which is started by ChatGPT and now has gone on, and we have many more different versions of these large language models. And I think the impact has been absolutely stunning, and there's no doubt that our lives have all been completely changed. We are all using generative AI, I think, several times a day. And now, even before the advent of ChatGPT, there's been a lot of work using the basic tools of AI, which is machine learning and deep learning. And in fact, the Northeastern has been involved in this topic for really many years. I'd say at least over a decade, and perhaps even before that. And much of the academic work has focused on developing large language models, neural network models, and the tools of AI. And they have been applied to a variety of problems. Faculty and researchers here have been involved in using AI for a variety of applications, ranging from not only in computer science, but also in finance, in business, in healthcare, and in some of the examples in healthcare range from analyzing images, analyzing speech, medical records, and so on. There have been many patents that have been filed by university faculty and students, and several spin-outs have emerged from that. I'm going to just run through a few of them. So can we? This is by no means. Well, before that, I should first of all also introduce myself. I'm Sri Sridhar. I'm a university distinguished professor and director of the Nanomedicine Innovation Center. And I think I've been at Northeastern. I'm approaching my 4th decade very soon, in a couple of years. So that's probably quite a long time. So obviously, I have and continue to enjoy my involvement here at Northeastern. I served previously as vice provost for research. And my more recent, but I started off as a physics professor, and then I've meandered on to different topics. My areas of research recently are nanomedicine, and I direct the Nanomedicine Innovation Center here. And I also work on quantitative MRI using magnetic nanoparticles, and developing new technologies, neurotechnologies for neurovisual diagnostics of diseases like macular degeneration and glaucoma. And right now, I'm focused on applying generative AI towards STEM education, which I'm convinced that the large language models are going to transform the way we teach, and of course, not only the way we learn, but also the way we teach. And I think it's going to have an impact, and it introduces new ways of learning and teaching. So I'm now pivoting towards that in my current phase. So, as I said before, we have been involved, Northeastern has been involved in AI in various forms, and I want to now mention some of the, so there have been many publications, and I'm not going to discuss or mention the extensive academic work that has gone on, but I'd like, in the spirit of invention and innovation of this meeting, I'd like to mention some of our startups and some of our inventions that have gone on to become startups or have been licensed. So, so I'd like to start with the next slide. This is work by Dr. Saeed Amal, which is concerns what he calls explainable AI, but it impacts oncology, cardiology in precision medicine. Dr. Amal is actually going to say a few words later on because he's here and he's going to receive an innovation award later on. So he may have a few more to say about his work. Next, this is a startup called Empath by Professor Dory Woods and Professor John Tilley, which basically is a major improvement on omic analysis. As you know, multi-omics means not genomics, proteomics, transcriptomics, and when these are all techniques that are used to assess the health of an individual. And so they have a very interesting platform that combines these various omics and speeds up the path to find actionable targets and preliminary. And they're already working on tests that will be shortened in a few weeks, focused initially on mitochondria, but also extending to other targets. Next, this is Dr. Kiran Vanaja, who is developing a deep learning net for cancer cell fate prediction. And he has a patent that he has filed. Next, Threat Therapeutics by Professor Rebecca Carrier and Dr. Rejdo basically wants to improve how oral drugs are formulated at high doses. I think you all have taken oral medicines, and there is a great need to improve their delivery and their efficacy in therapy, and this is a new approach that Professor Carrier and her colleagues have developed. Next, this is a new startup by Professor Sarah Ostad Abbas. It's called AI Wover, and I think what she described it to me as AI watching over, infants, and this is she is the solution that she has developed is to improve context-aware tracking, and it's something that all parents can appreciate. You want to make sure your child is safe, and if there are anything, you want to be informed of that. So this is a tremendous improvement on infant watching and child watching. Next, this is Neurofields is my company that we've developed a new platform for using basically a VR headset, adding a electric brain sensor here at the back, and to analyze the brain, how the brain responds to visual stimuli. So basically, it diagnoses the eye-brain connection, and the key point I want to mention in all of these is that AI is a fundamental player, and in this particular case, for instance, there are diagnostic techniques, but they're all of an older generation, and ours is of a new generation, which is heavily powered by artificial intelligence. So I wanted to give you an overview of the work that is going on at Northeastern, and now I want to, we're very pleased and we are fortunate to have as our speaker today Gay Buck. Gay is a investor experienced in sourcing, evaluating, investing, and managing investments in digital healthcare. She was previously she led the Mass General Brigham's AI and Digital Innovation Venture Fund. And prior to that, she was a venture partner at an institutional venture fund. And she's also has extensive experience in commercial and business development as an executive who is focused on developing projects and strategic partnerships. So would like to invite Gay Buck to come and tell us about her insights into this field.
Thank you, Sri, for that introduction. And it's a delight to be here at Northeastern, and I really love your view. So thanks for that. So I thought that, let's see if this works. Sorry, somehow this got to. Okay. So just briefly today, I thought that we would talk about, Sri asked me to share a personal journey about how I ended up investing in venture. I otherwise would not burden you with that, but I will entertain that request. Then I thought we would talk about investing in AI in healthcare and sort of what some of those trends have looked like. Have a little bit of a discussion or share with you some of the tailwinds and headwinds as I perceive them, most recently, particularly from a provider perspective, having been inside Mass General Brigham for the last 5 years, and then what venture investors look for. So just briefly, a journey to venture investing. I started out after business school joining a chemical company. My background was in finance and international management, and that's what drew me to an international chemical company here in Boston. Luckily, the CEO had been a venture investor for the American Research Development Corporation at MIT, which is one of the earliest venture funds in the country. General Diorio is generally credited with having set up one of the very first ones. And so Sam Bodman, our CEO, really took a venture approach, and I was lucky enough to be put on a team of 3 of us to go into the research organization of Cabot Corporation and try and identify inventions that would perhaps be the basis for future business development and to be the nucleus for new businesses. So that was really my first experience at looking at what does it take to get technology out of the lab and into the marketplace. And then sort of fast forward, in the early aughts, I was really interested in what was going on in life sciences and wanted to use some of the skills I had learned at Cabot Corporation and elsewhere to really see what the opportunity looked like at the intersection of life sciences and energy. And that goes better. It's a longer conversation over a drink over why that was where I wanted to go. And while I was looking for those opportunities, fortunately, someone I knew very well was co-founding Synthetic Genomics alongside Craig Venter, who had recently, at that point, helped sequence the human genome. And so he now wanted to write genome, and wanted to focus the company on energy and energy applications. So that was my first sort of startup, the second startup, but the first one where I was really involved in writing the offering memorandum and making the pitch to investors and the like, and then stayed on there doing business development. And then again shifted to Microbia here up in Lexington, which at the time had engineered a yeast platform. And the idea was to replace petroleum-based chemicals with bio-based chemicals. And so they had engineered a yeast platform that could generate or produce carotenoids, which are often are very complicated organic chemistry otherwise. So for that, my role was really commercializing and figuring out how to scale this up. And so that was another sort of area of learning. It all makes sense in the rearview mirror, right? When DSM bought Microbia, I then joined Excel Venture Management, which had been formed by some of the folks involved in the formation of synthetic genomics. And the original idea, frankly, was I joined as an EIR, and I think we all thought I would find another industrial biotech company to join. And then I got increasingly interested in venture at the time that there was big data, there was a lot of excitement over what digital tools could do in healthcare, and started to work on the portfolio for the venture fund. And then around about 2019, Mass General Brigham, again, doubling down on the AI, or both AI and big data trends that were going on in the market, made a decision to have this, I call it their Digital Strategy 1.0, and committed about $1 billion to their digital strategy. And as part of that, wanted to stand up a $30 million venture fund that would invest in companies where the health system was a customer. And so I left and joined Mass General Brigham to set that fund up, and that's what I've been doing for the last 5 years. So hopefully that wasn't too tedious, but just wanted to share that with you. So in terms of AI and digital, I thought it would be helpful to kind of start by looking at where we've been. I think this slide shows you from Rock Health sort of what the level of funding in digital health has been over the last 10 years. And you can see that it was growing, but not terribly quickly, but it was growing steadily prior to the pandemic. And then it really accelerated during the pandemic as we all went home, and the effort in healthcare was to try and figure out how do you provide care to people when you don't want them to come into the hospital. Excuse me. And you can see that there was a huge exuberance in the market in 2020 and 2021. And then that has since sort of fallen off for a variety of reasons, which I'll touch on. I do think that one of the, prior to the pandemic, back at the at Excel, we actually weren't investing very much in provider-facing solutions because health systems were really not embracing digital tools at that time. There was a lot of skepticism from providers. It was very hard to get adoption. So it was a really transformative period in 2020 and 2021 when people were really starting to use these at scale. Oops, sorry, that went, let me go back. Okay. Well, we're going to be on a little bit of an adventure here. This will tell you a bit more about where, in the last 5 years, where folks have been investing, or where venture has been investing in digital health. And I think there's been a lot of work on treatment of disease. I think that the notable thing from where I've been in the last 5 years is there's a real increase in the investment and appetite and adoption of non-clinical workflow opportunities. So really, the sort of what I've come to understand is the closer that you are to actual patient care, the more conservative is the provider community in terms of adoption. Very exciting, a lot going on in diagnostics, but actually getting it to the patient has been challenging from a risk perspective as well as a payment reimbursement perspective. But I think that, so you can see them sort of going back and forth between treatment of disease and non-clinical workflow in terms of investment in those sectors. I think if you look at the top funded clinical indications, you've got the behavioral health, which had been probably underinvested for quite some period of time. Again, with the advent of the pandemic, really underscored the scarcity of the resources. I think also when you look at some of the telemedicine capabilities, just the pandemic really showed. Sorry, I didn't touch it, and I don't know what's going on. So that's really interesting. But okay, let me just finish that slide. So I think with behavioral health, what you find is that it really lends itself to the technology. And once there was adoption and comfort with telemedicine in general, it's really proven out that it makes that it's very efficacious for the patient and very doable for the provider. And so I think that's one of the reasons you see so much attention. You also, as we all know, have seen a very large increase in demand for behavioral health services and a real dearth of providers. So I think those are kind of tailwinds that you can write large as you look at different specialties around and through healthcare going forward. So now we're back to the slide I thought we were moving to. And so this is about, this takes a cut of the AI-enabled, okay. Yeah,
Or you could say next slide.
okay, let's just go back to this. I'm gonna put this here.
And then say next.
I haven't been touching it,
Yeah.
but, okay. What I think is interesting about this slide is, it really sets up that venture funding is a leading indicator in digital health, and that if you look, initially there was some investment, and we can go into this longer. Many of you have probably either given or sat through lectures about the history of AI, right? There have been long time deserts, but in terms of this chart, you see that there's some investment in AI-enabled digital health startups going back to 2014, but it really starts to get going in 2016, and then you see a steady growth such that by 2024, it's 37%, and I think that's going to just continue to grow for sure. Sorry. So let's go to next, and we'll see what the next one is. Okay, looking ahead, you can see what, and there are a number of projections out there about where AI in healthcare is going. This one is the Global Market Insights. But you can see that despite all of the activity added up to about 18 billion in market size, and I think this is a global number by 2023. And what was also interesting is that about 7 billion of that is actually in diagnostics and imaging. So I think that is sort of from a technical perspective. As Sri had said, you first had a lot of work going on in machine learning techniques and then in neural networks around and lending themselves to use imaging and medical imaging to develop algorithms that could both diagnose and mostly diagnose indications and help to triage people to the correct treatment. I think that, again, as I had said, one of the big tailwinds on this, and I think it's about a 37% CAGR on this, or compounded annual growth rate, and a big tail on this is the demand for, the increased demand for healthcare and the constrained supply of clinicians providing that care. And I think when you peel back what's going on, that's going to be a pretty significant tailwind overall. I have seen, and I've lived that at Mass General Brigham, where when I started and we found a really interesting tech-enabled service and tried to get interest in it from our colleagues at Mass General Brigham, there's a lot of pushback. It was like, why would we adopt a tech-enabled service? That's what we do. We provide that service, and it's not going to be as good as what we do anyway. And it's only been, and that was true, but in the last 2 years, you go back to those clinicians, and they're so swamped with demand for healthcare that they're open to triage, tech-enabled triaged service, as long as it sort of takes the challenge facing the patient away, treats them, and then brings it back to the clinician at an appropriate point. So it's all, and that's another sort of point about, you always want to have your invention and your solution work seamlessly for the provider in the workflow. The other tailwind that I think helped a lot during the pandemic, and we're sort of waiting to see how it's going to continue, was sort of changed reimbursement as well, where some healthcare at home got parity in terms of its reimbursement. Certain remote patient monitoring started to have their own CPT codes and the like, and so that's pushed it as well. So in terms of use cases, I thought you'd be interested to sort of see what the latest for the CB Insights folks have put the 50 digital health startups on a page. You can find any number of these maps. I was looking for a AI in healthcare map, and the field's gotten so broad that you need to be very specific to fit on a particular slide. But this is the top 50. I think the most interesting thing about this slide are really the areas of inquiry, or the areas of for solutions. And I think based on my experience, the ones where I've seen the greatest adoption I didn't touch it. Can I go back? Have been in the clinical intelligence and the administrative workflow optimization. And that goes back to sort of where people have been most comfortable embracing, particularly neural network or newer AI technologies, where it's harder to really lock down the result. And it's so that the risk of having a wrong suggestion is much lower than on the clinical side. So then I'll try this. All right, let's try next. Okay. So I think we skipped a slide, but that's all right. I apologize for this. Yeah. So for all of the optimism for AI in healthcare, and it is a very optimistic overall trend in healthcare, and I think it's going to help us all enormously in our personal health as well as from a societal perspective. There have been some really significant headwinds to adoption of AI in healthcare, particularly from a provider perspective. And I think one of the big ones has been trust and transparency issues. So with machine learning, I think health systems had done a lot of work on getting comfortable with machine learning-based algorithms, because what you put in, you pretty much knew you were going to get, you could get repeatably the same thing out. With neural networks, and now especially with foundation models and the large language models, that is not the case. And so it's a lot of conservative work being done to try and figure out how do you assure that you're comfortable with the validity of what's being suggested by the algorithm. The data complexity and data management challenges are tremendous. As there's more data required to train algorithms, there's the data, the source of data is quite dirty and quite complicated. So we have a lot of data coming in from different sources, from consumer sources, from our electronic health records, from quantitative information coming into the medical record from devices. There's just a lot of different sources of data, and that needs to be cleaned up and organized so that you can train the algorithms on good quality data. That is an expensive proposition, and so I think that's also been a hindrance to the adoption of AI in healthcare. Regulatory hurdles as well have been challenging. I think particularly in the imaging side, we've seen probably the most FDA-cleared software as a medical device clearances in the radiology space with a whole number of software as a medical device algorithms. Unfortunately, to really make those truly useful to the health system, one needs to be able to take advantage of sort of this technology's capability to identify multiple findings in an image and the like. And unfortunately, our FDA regulatory process right now for clearance requires every finding, every indication to have its own FDA clearance process. And I think that's really a disadvantage here at the US. If you look ex-US, you see a lot more adoption of some of the more powerful foundation-based multimodal models that are able to take an image and identify, in one image, multiple diagnoses as well as incidental findings, and share that with the provider. And it's just really a very large regulatory barrier to do that here. I think that will change over time. Misaligned financial incentives is sort of related to that, to the extent that you have a health system that is, excuse me, fee-for-service based. It reduces the incentive to adapt certain inventions. So you really, some of the best uses of healthcare algorithms is to, diagnose early patients and try and do care coordination and the like. And that works really well when both when the provider is at risk for the ultimate outcome from the patient. So I think that you see, again, you see a lot of more willingness perhaps to adopt some of the more cutting-edge clinical AI inventions where there is a single payer or a payer who's at risk for the outcome. And then the last thing I want to touch, is the cost of integration and maintenance. And I think everybody's aware that the health systems in the U.S., here in Boston and across the country, for the most part, are really struggling financially. There's been an increase in costs without a commensurate increase in reimbursement that has really caused a great deal of cost cutting. So you have your digital teams, your IT teams that have been very much reduced in their capacity at a time when there are a lot of companies coming to, or the health system is trying to adopt new technology. And that means that even when you are successful at selling a company's offering to the provider, once they sign on, there may be as much as a 12 to 15-month lag before they actually can cut free the resources needed to do that integration, and then the costs for integration and maintenance. And I think for those of you who are entrepreneurs in the room, it's really worth understanding that that's had some fundamental shifts in sort of how permeable the health systems are to new businesses, new opportunities. There's been a shift, I'd say, in 2020, 2021, when we had the pandemic. There was this opening up of let's try all sorts of point solutions to try and address these problems. And then you get to 2022 or thereabouts, and you had a number of health systems take a look at their tech stack and realize that they had, upwards of 3,000 applications in their stack that they were trying to maintain and keep track of. And so there was a real shift amongst a number of health systems to try and shrink the absolute number of vendors on the digital stack. And so what that means for you, if you're an entrepreneur in the audience, is that you have to have a very strong value proposition that not just an incremental benefit to the health system, but it has to be a really significant benefit, because you're trying to have that benefit be sufficient that not just that you overcome the additional cost of taking on an additional vendor, if that makes sense. So I think it's a really important point to take on board, that if you're developing a new solution and you're targeting the healthcare sector, you probably want to try and find a partner early and make sure that you're thinking not just about the actual clinical or operational benefit, but how is it going to get integrated in with the health system's overall stack? How labor intensive is that going to be? How easy can you make that for the customer? So those are just some of the headwinds to the adoption of AI, and I'm happy to talk with you later about it. So sort of, again, from a venture perspective, what do we look for in solutions? We're looking to invest in solutions to big problems. So I think that there's a whole nother talk I could give about horses for courses. Not every company, and in fact very few companies, have the kind of profile that lend themselves to venture investing. There are other sources of capital, but if you're a venture investor, you're looking for solutions to big problems. And I think that the wonderful part about being alive right now is both the AI and then also in life sciences, and our other speaker was going to take that piece of AI, but I think that both of these technologies widen the set of solutions that are possible. But at the end of the day, you still have to solve a significant problem. So you're looking for a large total addressable market, a highly differentiated solution. And then also when you're looking at the outcomes data that you're going to generate, not just clinical, but also think about the financial outcomes and what you're going to need to demonstrate ROI, and try and start to set yourself up so you can generate that data early and think about it as a multi-stakeholder problem. So you want to not just get the financial outcomes for the department you're talking to, you want to talk to the folks who are, what's the digital perspective going to be on this offering? What's the CFO's perspective going to be? How are you going to sell? And then start to generate the data that supports those arguments, as well as this is a better outcome for the patient. So you need to start to generate that data all the way along, because you're going to need all of that to successfully sell into a health system or a payer, for that matter. We're looking for IP. We're really looking for a moat. In AI, the IP, the patents, you all are probably more savvy on this than I am. I mean, they can be negotiating tools, but really patents are sort of a less of a moat in in AI than maybe in other fields such as life sciences, biotech, but also know-how, protocols, a brand, even an installed base. But you need to think about what is your moat against other competitors coming to the field. We always look for a demonstrated customer acceptance, enthusiasm, a capital efficient plan to get to meaningful revenue growth. I think this has been a change since the pandemic, or since those big years of generous financing, so that we've had, we're now looking for capital efficiency. So what's it going to take to get to meaningful revenue growth and a sustainable business model? We still want to see growth. That's what venture is about. You're looking for companies that are maybe they've self-funded or they've taken grants or whatever on the flatter part of the curve, and we're looking to invest in companies that are just ready to take off in terms of revenue growth. And you'll find that venture investors now are asking for their portfolio companies to work to prove out their unit economics earlier, so that at least what the gross margin is going to look like as you go forward. So, despite all those headwinds and the criteria, I think that AI use in healthcare is just getting started. I think that as I said, I think we need it desperately as you look at the mismatch of supply and demand between the demand for healthcare and the supply of clinicians. So I'm excited about where we're going. I think you all should be incredibly excited to be here at Northeastern, which I liken to as being a rocket ship. And so, congratulations to all of you. And hopefully that was of interest. Thank you very much.
Questions and answers. So, time for questions. Yes, go ahead, please. Oh, well.
Hello, thank you so much. Oh, okay, that's appropriate volume, I assume. I'm curious about the enthusiasm towards AI in the service side, because I personally feel as if there's a bit of a pushback against pure AI-based service. When I called a hospital, it would be preferable to speak to a human as opposed to pre-programmed AI. And I'm also curious about how much of a development there in the precautions we are taking against misuse of AI in, again, the service sector. What are the protections? Because in the medical, it seems like there's always a doctor cross-checking with the imaging methods, for example, versus it's more of a push for replacement of a workforce in the service area.
I think it's going to be a long time before you see, I think that pretty much every solution has got a human in the loop, especially if it's clinically facing. If it's patient facing, I think we're quite a ways away from, for clinical problems, having it go to automatic. I think where people are trying to get comfortable is to use it for triage purposes, so that if you only have so many neurologists, that you're sure that the patients that are getting referred to the neurologist need that level of care, as opposed to just have a headache, right? So that's sort of the level, or I agree. I don't think that there's much appetite for pure automation in the patient-facing applications. I think where you look at administrative, there's definitely much more interest, but again, it needs to be reliable, and so that's kept the human in the loop in some of those applications. But I think that's where you'll see the most automation fastest, is the farthest from touching a patient. So yeah, you might have an automated call center for sure, right, at some point, and then, but an automated doctor visit without a person, I think we're a long way away from that. I could be wrong, but I do. That's my perspective on it. In terms of safety, there's a lot of work that's being done on, as I said, on how do we get comfortable that even the neural network-based models, but especially the foundation-based models, that they're accurate and that they're going to be reliable, and how do we monitor and assure that they haven't drifted, right? And so that's a really big thorny problem. And in terms of opportunity for invention and innovation, there are a number of companies that are really trying to figure out how are we going to monitor and how are we going to assure quality for this new sort of category of models. So that's, and there's been a lot of work in the last 18 months around governance models in general for health systems. Some of it was driven by some executive orders from President Biden. Those have been rescinded. I think that pushes it back on the providers. So I think that you'll see even more kind of concern, because at the end of the day, it's the provider who's responsible for the care provided. So I think you'll see maybe even more sort of effort to try and figure out how are we going to economically do the quality assurance on these new tools.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your lecture. My name is Li Tong. I'm curious about, just you mentioned about transparency and trust in AI in health. I've been running my startup about AI in health. So one thing is that for a very initial stage, what kind of thing for startup, the creator, the founders, to pay attention about the bioethical parts? Because at the beginning, maybe the design of products were not that professional in some legal issue or some bioethical, because we're not that professional and we don't have enough resources. So do you think any practical tips for us to do at a very initial stage without lots of resources or funding? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish my co-speaker were here to take that one, but I would say it's important that your data be permissioned, particularly if you're using an individual's data, that be permissioned. I think that for many companies, it's useful to try and partner with a provider to make sure that you're getting, and that can be a lengthy negotiation, but I think working with a partner that's got data that's been appropriately permissioned is important. I think you don't want to train your algorithm on some data that then is going to concern the ultimate customer about its provenance.
Okay, thanks.
Hello, my name's Vince Harris. I'm a professor here at Northeastern, as well as the director of the Costas Research Institute. I want to thank you for coming and speaking this afternoon. My question is, in venture capital investments of, let's say, a startup, the value of the startup is often represented by awarded patents and other forms of intellectual property. So with AI innovation, do you find it more challenging to protect patents nationally and internationally, or is it more favorable to protect these through trade secrets?
Yeah, it's a great question to which I don't have a great answer, is probably the honest answer for that. The companies that we've invested in have not had a lot of patent protection, and so they haven't figured into our diligence process. Now, the fund that I've most recently been running had a requirement to invest in companies that were already commercial by definition, because the health system was going to be a customer. So by that point, I don't think that it's really the germane point for valuation. Whether to go to the expense of a patent, I think you need to get yourself a good patent attorney that is well-versed in that space and figure out what could be the value of it from a negotiation perspective. That's kind of how I would look at it. I think, valuation in venture is, and this is part of the talk, I ran out of time I wanted to honor the 20 minutes. It's a very, it's not a science. And it's tied to, and I think it's really important when you're in a startup and you're trying to think about what's the value of my startup, this is my soapbox thing, is you need to think about what is the real value of the solution. And the solution is much more than just the invention, it's the whole thing. But when you're going to get to the solution and you want to imagine yourself as a mature company, and what's the valuation likely to be of that, right? And then typically venture-backed companies are valued at a much higher valuation than publicly traded, but they're tied. So what you saw in 2021 was a real jump in financing. You saw some ludicrous pricing in terms of a multiple of revenues, and that was partly because the stock market was really high and the publicly traded multiples on revenue were high, and so everything moved up. That's gone away. So now you're back to sort of the familiar 4x revenue kind of multiples on publicly traded companies. I'm not saying that's what you use for your startup, but it is something that you want to think about. The way I think you want to think about what is your value likely to be, and then work backwards. How much cash am I going to need to get there? And then chunk it up into inflection points. What do I need right now in order to achieve that value inflection point? And get what you need and price it, reasonably, so that when you go for your next chunk, the price is higher. The one thing you want to do as an entrepreneur is always have an increase in your valuation. You don't want to have it go way up and then go down because of the way that the capital, the way that the balance sheet is structured. You're going to have, your investors are going to get, you're going to get diluted in that situation. So that's a long answer to your question.
Maybe can I, along these lines, and I think you already alluded to it in your talk, but in a sense, is AI any, the issues about patents and invention in AI, are they any different than traditional software, for instance?
I don't think
And
so.
so I think you already mentioned that whereas the inventions and the moat is more important in life sciences and other areas, it is less so in AI, maybe because it is software-based.
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely the case. And I think also AI, it's interesting, the last couple of panels I've been on with other health system execs, and I think I was with, and their comments increasingly are that AI is great, it opens up the solution set, but it's still a software, and it still has to meet the same kinds of requirements that traditional software has to. They're going to look at it from an ROI perspective. They're going to look at it from a maintenance perspective of what's it like, how hard is it to integrate, what's the interoperability concerns, what's the cybersecurity concern, because one of the things driving this reduction in the number of vendors is the surface area of a stack, and the more the more vendors you use, the more applications you use, the tougher it is to secure your to secure your digital footprint, and I think that's another piece that people have been concerned about.
Yeah, did you, yeah,
Yeah, I have two questions, if you don't mind. First is, what advice would you give to a startup in this sort of this area as to what to model into their business model for the length of the sales cycle to the healthcare industry now? And the second is, if you care to share your thoughts, what do you think the changes in the FDA now will bring to the regulatory process?
I think it's too early to say on the latter, and it's outside my area of expertise. So that's sort of like where I'll put it. I do think that there is, the one area where I have an opinion is in the radiology space. It's not necessarily that I'm any more qualified to have an opinion in that space, but having looked at it, it just seems that there are a number of companies that are really offering a benefit to patients ex-US, and it's really our regulatory that's making that difficult, and there's just an incredible shortage of radiologists to read our scans. So that's where that comes from. Your first question was
The length of sales cycle?
the length of sales cycle is really tough. You know, it's a good day is 12, 15 months is a good day, right? So I think what you have to do is plan your cash budgeting and your financing with the assumption that that is what you're looking at. And so, that goes back to pricing of your company and being sort of try and meter in and try and use non-dilutive financing for as long as you can, right? To sort of try and get to that point where you're ready to sell to a customer. And I think another way to maybe shorten it or maybe hit those targets is to collect data for as many stakeholders as you can at the same time. I think in prior experiences, I've seen companies that spent a lot of time, money, and effort to get FDA clearance, didn't at the same time collect what's the outcome from a payer perspective, and had to go back and collect that data. And it's much, much cheaper to kind of extend the data collection the first time around, and it's less time than to go and do it again because you need to now satisfy the payer or you need to now satisfy the digital folks or whomever. So the market understanding is cheap relative to the work that gets done to develop the outcomes data. So I say invest more upfront, but it's
Thank you.
tough. It's long term. It is.
One of the key differences between AI and probably other software is the training part, right? And you need a lot of training. And the training can actually improve things and generally it actually improves the accuracy. So there is an evolution, I think, in response to that question on the life cycle of these things. And they're really moving fast, for instance, in the LLMs.
Yeah, no, I think that the technology is getting better and the outcomes are getting better, but the selling process is not getting shorter. So
We have a question here from a future student in Northeastern University.
What inspired you to do this?
I think that I really love I am not a scientist, but I think in the course of my career, I really fell in love with the power of technology and how technology can make people's lives better. And I want to have some kind of a relevant impact on that. And I think really want to work in healthcare because that's a pretty fundamental, how do you make people's lives better? But I also have a pretty warm spot for renewable energy as well.
So, Gay, you addressed one issue that I was going to ask about the investments in AI because there was this huge peak in 2021 and then it dropped off. But I think you explained it as saying that's really part of the whole entire. I think all sectors probably had the same peak and then dropped off, right?
I don't know of
overall.
all sectors, but certainly the digital health did for sure.
Well, but I think there
and then
was
the whole on the market went.
right.
There's a lot of growth.
Yeah, right. But nevertheless, I think, I mean, you know, we're all been wowed by you know, generative AI. I mean, I've been using it, you know, I feed my lab tests to ChatGPT and say, you know, what's your recommendation for treatment? And I'm happy to say that my clinician agreed exactly with what ChatGPT said. So, I mean, even down, you know, it said, you know, increase the dose of this from 100 to 112 micrograms, which is exactly what the clinician said. So I think there is that aspect of that. It's going to change the way we individually are going to interact with medicine.
Yeah, and I think that there's a couple of thoughts on that. One is that for the clinical facing where patients are involved, my observation has been that there's more comfort from health system side to deploy those tools via one of their established partners. So that if you think about it, if you have a new decision support solution health system and you're a startup, it's a lot of risk on risk for them to use a startup as opposed to work with Microsoft or work with Epic on their Gen AI clinical decision support. So I think that's just something you have to factor in again. So that goes, where that hits you is you have to come up with that much better of an outcome that it makes it worth that risk, right? So I think that's sort of one of the challenges that I see. I see generative AI really being utilized and adopted, but I think we're seeing it most readily through already established players that have the whole cybersecurity piece. They have protocols. They have, you know, a lot of infrastructure to make sure that it's correct. But I do think that it's interesting. I mean, I think the sort of direct-to-consumer opportunities. I think the dearth of clinicians, particularly for primary care. You know, we saw that opening in 2020, 2021, and then a fall off of some of the so-called disruptors. And I think that you're seeing more incorporation of those disruptions, new tools for, new AI tools for care being incorporated into health systems. But if they don't move fast enough, I think you'll see another wave of disruptors as people get more and more confident in the Gen AI. The other area that I keep, you know, when I was thinking about why hasn't, you know, Teladoc and American Well taken over the world, right? And I think it comes back down to trust, and it comes back down to the provider, the trust with your doctor, the trust with your clinician. So I think until the Gen AI tools, until and unless they can really establish a similar level of trust, you're going to have the health system or the provider be preferred.
Well, Gay, thank you very much. We really appreciate that you came and gave us your very deep perspective on AI, and particularly from as an investor. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to move on to the next part of the program. Our other speaker actually had a unfortunate accident today and could not make it. So we're going to move on to the next portion, which is going to be conducted by Professor Randall Earp.
Thanks very much, Sri. I am the faculty chair of our NAI chapter. Excited to be with you today. One of our big goals today is networking and making this chapter a meaningful experience, finding connection with fellow innovators and finding synergy between all of us. We are entering a celebratory part of tonight's event. We have a few awards to showcase and a few folks to bring up and congratulate. And then after that, we'll have our networking session with our hors d'oeuvres and can continue this process of finding value amongst us. So first off, I would like to express our extreme thanks to Hamilton Brooks Smith Reynolds in the back here at the table for their generous sponsorship of the Innovation, Impact, and Emerging Visionary Awards. They have enabled us to provide these awards. As a full-service intellectual property law firm, Hamilton Brooks Smith Reynolds has played a critical role in protecting and advancing groundbreaking innovations at Northeastern for over a decade. They've been a real part of our community here. Their expertise, strategic approach, and personal touch empower our faculty researchers to transform ideas into real-world impact. Further, HBSR's support ensures that Northeastern can continue to recognize and celebrate those who push the boundaries of discovery. So at the back table, we have Mark and Deidre, and they represent the HBSR team, and we give them a very warm thank you to Hamilton Brooks Smith and Reynolds. I have the distinct pleasure of bringing Kenneth Blank up to the stage. Kenneth is a NAI fellow, one of our elite innovators, and he will present our first award.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Ken Blank. I have very close ties to Northeastern University for many, many years, and it's great to be here today. I am also a board member of the National Academy of Inventors, so it's with great pleasure that I bring Dr. Paul Sandberg's greetings to you. Dr. Sandberg is the president of the National Academy of Inventors and a very fine person who's done a great job of expanding the National Academy to the prominence the prominent place which it now holds in universities and with inventors. Today, I feel strange because I've known Vince Harris for so long that reading something about him seems very artificial. But since this was written by his student and colleague, Unime, I am going to read it because it's hers, and I'll get punished if I don't read it. So, but be aware I will interject things as I'm going forward. So today, it's my great honor to present the Northeastern NAI Innovation Impact Award, an award that recognizes a faculty member whose innovation not only breaks barriers, but inspires the next generation of inventors. This year's recipient, Professor Vince Harris, is the embodiment of what it means to be a groundbreaking inventor and innovator. His work spans industry, academia, defense, and many, many other areas. I'll wait to make comments. Vince is currently the CEO and director of the Costas Research Institute, the chairman of the board, I think, of Metamagnetics, which is a company that he founded, not just a leader, Unime, he's chairman of the board. A university distinguished professor and the William Lincoln Smith Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering. From the time at the Naval Research Laboratory, where he led efforts in electronic materials for the next generation defense systems, to his leadership at Northeastern University to his role as a policy expert for the US government, Professor Harris has continuously pushed the boundaries of scientific discovery and made a measurable impact to the world. And let me just say, Vince has served as a Franklin Fellow. Franklin Fellow? Jefferson Fellow. I knew it was one of our founding fathers. Jefferson Fellow for the State Department. This role was extremely crucial because Vince is an expert in critical minerals. And as you know, as you may know, that's a huge topic for the defense industry and various industries which rely on critical materials. And Vince was responsible for educating the high levels of the State Department, including the Secretary of State, in in critical minerals and why they were important and how they were produced and the whole gamut of the role of critical minerals, as well as in other areas as well. So, Vince, thank you for doing that and making everybody aware of the importance of the critical minerals. Vince has major inventions in the field of material science and electrical engineering. His groundbreaking research in ferrite materials has earned him international recognition, ranking him the #1 worldwide researcher in ferrite ceramics and magnets, and placing him at the forefront of the field that powers everything from defense technologies to high-frequency devices. His contributions have merited him being awarded the distinction of a Fellow of APS, Applied Physics Society? Sorry? Okay. Can't use abbreviations with somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about, you know, man. A fellow of AAAS, a fellow of IOP. Okay. And a fellow of the National Academy of Inventors. That one I can get. He's been honored with numerous prestigious awards, including the W. David Kingery Award for Distinguished Lifelong Achievements in Ceramics. And Vince has built a legacy of innovation, as we've said, that spans academia, industry, and government. In addition to his scholarship, what also sets Professor Harris apart is his unwavering commitment to mentorship, teaching, and fostering a spirit of innovation. He actively cultivates the next generation of disruptive thinkers, ensuring that his influence extends beyond his own work. We are honored to have him as part of our NAI chapter. Professor Harris, your vision, leadership, and relentless pursuit of excellence have shaped industries and inspired the next generation of researchers. Please join me in celebrating this year's Northeastern NAI Innovation Impact Award with Professor Harris. And by the way, let me add, he is all the things that Unime put in here for me to read, but as a colleague and as a friend, there is no more outstanding individual that I've met. So thank you, Vince.
I'm surprised you made that without crying.
I'm tearing up.
So everyone should know that when Ken walked by me, I said, keep it short. And he failed. So I just wanted to say, I want to speak for 2 to 3 minutes, and that's code for Northeastern Professor Talk for 20 to 30 minutes. But I wanted to just briefly speak to my experience at Northeastern because it goes back all the way to 1983, where I was a student here and I met my wife, who I've known for 75 years. I didn't know her for 75 years. But I needed to say that. I've been waiting a long time to say that publicly. It didn't go over as well as I thought it would. So Linda and I met in '83, and we often kid ourselves that Northeastern was accepting everyone in 1983. And the two of us wouldn't stand a chance to get into Northeastern today because the students are just amazing. They're just incredible. And being a professor, it's really hard to keep up with them. And I've been a professor here almost 23 years, and I can say I don't think I'd be hired as a professor here today because the professors we're hiring today are also amazing. And I don't think I would make it to the standard to get through a hiring committee. But so Sri had talked about him going on 4 decades at Northeastern, and you probably don't remember me, but I was a graduate student when you came here as an assistant professor, and you were studying. You were studying superconductivity, and then you went into nonlinear physics, and that's the rest is history. So we covered a lot. And back then, most of this campus was covered in blacktop, and there was no flowers and no grass and no trees. But we did have parking. So not everything is great, right? Not everything new is great. But because I'm going to be here 2 hours, and I'm going to pay $42 and try to figure that out. But I do want to say Ken and I are actually dear friends, and we've known each other for 11 years, I think, or actually probably 14, 15 years. And it should be said that we have shared too many meals that involved steak and bourbon. And Unime, shame on you for writing all of this, but Unime and I go back, what is it, Unime? Almost 20 years. And if you look at Unime, you can tell she joined my laboratory when she was 12. But one of the things I do want to touch on is the role of the Center of Research Innovation, the CRI, which is a governing body of the NAI here, the Boston chapter, because not enough is said about the role of CRI in its management, in its innovation, in its initiation, in its guidance, not only for managing innovation and IP generation on campus, but also guiding startups through the very early stages, which are, believe me, speaking from personal experience, the most painful years. And I won't go into detail because you don't want to hear me go on for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, 60 minutes. But in those early years, it is so painful. And I personally, who spun out a company, which is doing very well now, I'm happy to say, through the hard work of a lot of people, CRI was an institute that helped me, because one of the things they did was when you start a company in those early years, you have no money. Right? And I'm sorry, we want to have your money, but oftentimes for those first 2 years, you're looking for money, but you don't have it. And you need counsel. You need someone to help you with IP. You need someone to help you with labor laws, someone to guide you through that process. What CRI was able to do for my company, which is Metamagnetics, Inc., was they were able to introduce us to a law firm that specialized, in part, dealing with small businesses in my segment, which was aerospace and defense electronics. And what I mean by that is they were able to introduce us to a law firm that said, you know what, we have a small business model. And that small business model was, for the first couple of years, we're not going to charge you hardly any money at all. And it was too good to be true. And then they said, here's the catch. If and when your company is up and running and you're making money, we want you to sign this contract that you're going to stay with us for 3 years, all right? And we said, this is dynamite, and that's exactly what happened. We ended up staying with them for about 10 years, and then we found we kind of vectored into a different market segment, and we found other companies that worked with us better, and they actually helped make introductions for us to make that transition. So without CRI, I don't think my company would have survived. And I'm not sure if the university leadership fully appreciates the positive role that CRI plays. And I, for one, Jen, you can count on me to visit those people and speak on your behalf. The last thing I want to say is, and I said this just a few weeks ago, is that I have been lucky, I'll say, to have received some of these accolades throughout my career. My career is now in its 35th year, and my goodness, it's just like having children. They're 2 and 3 years old, and you're throwing them up in the air, and then all of a sudden they have mustaches and tattoos, and you're like, what happened, right? So I remember when I was a postdoc, and that was 35 years ago, and it's like, oh my God. But the reason I've had a successful career is I've had the tremendous fortune of working with colleagues and mentors and students and postdocs And the one thing that I found that was a common thread was just generosity. People that just had tremendous generosity and unselfishness. Everyone I worked with never once was like me, me, me. It was always a team effort, and we celebrated as a team. Occasionally, we mourned our failures as a team. More often than not, we celebrated our wins. And so when anyone stands up, this is something I want everyone to remember. When everyone stands up, and you have someone like Ken Blank, who also is tremendously accomplished, and they start reading something that's nauseating, goes on for 15 minutes or something. And you sit there and you say, wow, that's quite a list of accomplishments. I want you to think about what I just said. I actually sat back because someone else embarrassed me about a month ago. And it made me think, how did I get here? And I counted about 300 collaborators, 300. And you know what? It might have been 400, but it wasn't 5. And it certainly wasn't 1. And so whenever you see people, you should think in your back of your mind, how many people influenced, how many people contributed? Too often, I see people that don't take that few seconds to say, hey, listen, I have Unime here, and believe me, Unime played a big role. All right? And usually, we have other students here, and I would point them out too. And forgive me if there are others here. And Linda played a tremendous role as well in my career. And too often, people, they forget, right? I think they appreciate, but they forget to communicate and to recognize that. So I think I've said everything. I think I went over 3 minutes, but it's not 20 or 30. So I thank you for this, and it's highly valued. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Up next, we have another award to give out. This one is focused on the AI and healthcare arena, which is our focus today. On Northeastern's Visionary Awardee, it is my great honor to present the award for Emerging Visionary in AI and Healthcare to an individual whose work exemplifies the very spirit of innovation and impact that this award seeks to recognize. Our awardee, Dr. Saeed Amal, is an assistant research professor in bioengineering whose groundbreaking work in precision medicine is poised to revolutionize cancer treatment. Dr. Amal has been at the forefront of developing assistive tools that harness the power of artificial intelligence to treat cancer with unprecedented precision. Prior to Northeastern, Dr. Amal was a vice president of R&D at a medical data startup specializing in cardiology, where he drove AI innovations to enhance diagnostic accuracy and patient outcomes. At Northeastern, his work has focused on the applications of AI to improve healthcare, particularly in cardiovascular disease, employing deep learning, machine learning, natural language processing, image processing, and recommender systems. The high-impact nature of his recent research articles and the successful licensing of his provisional software IP are testaments to Saeed's visionary approach and dedication. With testing and deployment of his AI-driven tools expected within the year on several solid tumors, his work promises to bring transformative impact to the field of AI and healthcare. Please join me in congratulating Dr. Saeed Amal, a true visionary in AI in healthcare. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So thank you for the introduction. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the CRI, the Center for Research Innovation, for their dedication and support and proficiency. I would like to thank also the National Academy of Inventors, for this recognition. And I would like also to thank the RU Institute, the Institute for Experiential AI, Bioengineering Department, and the College of Engineering, who supported me during my journey. I would like also to take this opportunity to thank my parents that because of them I'm here, and they supported me all over my life, and my wife that also supported me in this journey where we work 24/7, and it requires a lot of understanding from the house. And also my scientist kids, Sham and Alexander, that joined us today also for this celebration. So thank you everyone for attending, and good to be here.
Next up, we want to recognize some success nationally that we've had in our NAI chapter. We have 2 new NAI fellows here at Northeastern. They are Tommaso Melodia and Neon Sun. In addition, here today, we have a new NAI senior member, Steve Lustig, in the back, if you don't mind standing up. Congratulations, Steve. And the last thing we want to do today is to acknowledge and award our new members in our chapter. We have several new members, and what I would propose is the ones that are here, I will call out your name, and if you would come join me at the front, we'll take a new member photo, celebrate, and then we can proceed to networking. Please congratulate each one as I name them and come forward. We have Avinash Monjola Basovana, Slava Epstein, Sarib Matre, Marvin Onabajo, Sarah Ostadabas, Justin Race, and Marcia Roll. We'll take a quick picture here and then have another round of congratulations, and then we can network. Oh, I see. In addition, we also have a few new student members of our NAI chapter. If new student members don't mind, I unfortunately don't have the list, if new student members don't mind standing up, we can congratulate you, please. Anybody? New student members? Yeah. So let's take a quick picture if that's okay. Thanks for joining. Yeah, just come out of this picture. Just a picture. One more. Thank you. Apologize for making that awkward. Thanks. Thank you. Congrats. All right, thanks very much. This is going to conclude our forward event, and please stay around for appetizers and to meet each other and to network. This chapter will be what we make it, so let us make it something good. Thank you very much.